Live here at LTV. It is Monday, August 9th, and we are here with the East Hampton Town Supervisor, Peter Van Scoyoc. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a long day already. You know, Mondays, how that is.
Sure. Understand. Yeah.
So we're here, folks, at our new time, 5 o'clock on Mondays. And thanks, as always, for making yourself available to field questions, Peter, listen to ideas, and generally chat live on LTV's Channel 22 and on the LTV YouTube page. So to our viewers at home, simply dial the number that you'll see soon on the top of your screen. There it is. And you will be put into queue to speak with Peter. And if you prefer, you can also send a question to Michael Clark at ltveh.org. And I'll be checking my email during the show, and we'll read those questions to Peter. So feel free to call in and ask the supervisor. Peter, while we wait for those calls to come in or emails, and I know you have a town board work session tomorrow and 11 a.m. right here on Channel 22. What are some of the discussions that we can expect during that meeting?
So we'll have public comment, as we always do, where any member of the public may address board on any topic. We'll have ongoing discussion of the emergency communication system and personal wireless infrastructure. We'll have a discussion of proposed code changes to our geotextile geocube emergency permit for coastal erosion. We'll have a discussion about the South Fork Wind Farm license extension and real estate easement request, and that basically will deal with those areas within the town where that underground cable is proposed to be routed to the substation. Primarily, this is relating to areas along the Long Island Railroad easements, where the cable will travel for roughly 2.5 miles. And to be able to get access to some of those locations, the developer is looking to enter into agreement with the town on certain town properties that are along that section of railroad. So we'll have a discussion about that. There'll also be a discussion about the adult use cannabis legislation led by our town attorney, John Jelnicki. And then we'll have an update on that Seaview litigation case, otherwise known as Truck Beach. So all of that is on tap for tomorrow.
It's a full agenda for sure.
Full agenda, as it always seems to be. There's always a lot to talk about and work on.
You know, we'll kind of preempt some of those things, or what's the right word? I don't know, precursor or whatever, but we'll come back to those. But so what's your feeling on the big news? Obviously, is the in the state, you know, and I'm sure you got an opinion on it, is the Andrew Cuomo thing and what everything that's going on. And, you know, for me, it seems that it's probably the worst time for that, all this stuff to be rearing its ugly head because of the fact that, you know, I think we're going into another surge in with COVID. That's strictly my opinion, folks. But what are your thoughts on Cuomo and the calls for him stepping down?
Well, I guess first of all, I would say at the onset that I think the governor's done a really great job to date on many different things, particularly the response to the pandemic. I think that's really been an example for the nation. I'm very troubled by the report that's come out and the allegations and accusations as to sexual harassment. You know, here we are post Me Too movement and the focus on harassment and this kind of systematic kind of way of behavior that has gone on for a long time and has really, you know, come into the public focus in a very pronounced way, you know, Harvey Weinstein and beyond. You know, I don't think there's any place in our modern society for this type of behavior, and particularly from someone who's in a position of public trust. And, you know, so I don't think that's something that can be tolerated. You know, and I think it's really sad and unfortunate, but, you know, we need to move to a new paradigm how we treat other people, and particularly, this type of behavior should not be tolerated.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
yeah, I think, and you're right. I mean, Andrew Cuomo is either love him or hate him kind of guy, and I think during this, he was kind of like the country's governor for a while because of the way that he did handle the pandemic, regardless of what's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because there was a time when Rudy Giuliani was known as the country's mayor too, but.
Well, it's kind of where I was going. It's very it's a difficult time that we're running into, and he did such a great job. And I think regardless of whether or not whatever the decision is, or some of all the results that came out, he still lost credibility, and people aren't. He doesn't have the trust factor anymore, and it would seem like it might be a good time to step away and let someone else, carry the reins for a little while. It's kind of interesting that that person would be the lieutenant governor, who's a female in this situation.
Right, Kathy Hochul, and she's somebody I've met on several occasions. She's been out here to East Hampton several times, and I don't know her well, but I've had a number of conversations with her, and she strikes me as someone who, having been on a town board, having been a county clerk and worked her way up through government at different levels, she really understands, what it means to be a public servant. So, I got a generally really good feeling about her. She seemed like somebody who was attentive and responsive. Beyond that, I don't know her very well, like I said, but I think that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. We haven't had a female governor in New York State, which is, in a way, I think kind of surprising. And maybe this is when it happens and how it happens.
Right. But moving on to some of the local issues, Peter. So, two things, obviously, them better than anyone, that are on people's minds all the time: the airport and the cell towers, which you talked about, that you're going to be talking a little bit about tomorrow. The East Hampton Press had what I thought was a pretty good article on the court overturning the airport's flight policy. The airport flight policy, the special BC
flight rules, VFR.
VFR.
Yes, VFR. Yeah.
Right, the operation. So, why don't you give us a little update on that, Peter? So, how did all that come about?
Well, for some time we've believed, and our airport managers believe, that those types of operations are unsafe and they shouldn't be permitted. And by those operations, the special visual flight rules. Essentially, you have to maintain visibility during flight of an aircraft, and otherwise you're under instrument approach to the airport, which is IFR. And so if you're certified only for visual, there are certain situations where weather conditions have low ceilings. In other words, there's not a lot of distance between the fog or cloud banks and the ground. And what was happening was, under those atmospheric conditions, which are fairly common certain times of the year, particularly, I think, June, July, you're likely to have that marine layer coming in off the ocean. Helicopters, in some cases seaplanes, are flying very low, 300 feet in some cases, above the ground over populated areas at speeds in excess of 100 knots in some cases. And, there's really no margin for error if something goes wrong. So, the craft experiences a mechanical failure, there's really no time to recover from that. We know that there have been a number of accidents, some very high-profile accidents of helicopters in those types of situations. There was a crash in Manhattan under that type of situation with a helicopter, the Kobe Bryant crash, similar conditions. And so we felt it necessary to implement a restriction on that. So when the cloud cover was was like that we wouldn't have permission granted from our FAA compliant tower to land under those conditions. So as a result, we had an action brought by a helicopter company. The FAA ruled on our banning of those flights, and there's been a court injunction, or TRO, temporary restraining order, to prevent us from implementing that restriction. I think it's yet another example of the FAA intervening in the town's effort to maintain a safe airport and airspace around our town. And we're very disappointed, yet maybe not terribly surprised.
Right. So where does it go?
So from here, like I said, there's a temporary restraining order. There will be a hearing on the matter. The judge wants to get more information as to, the different sides' positions. And so they'll be argued in court, I believe on August 23rd. I'll have to check to see if there's any update on when that's occurring.
And one of the things that I noticed in the article that I was reading was that, is this true, Peter, that, restrictions, you can't really just close the airport on a sectional basis. In other words, you can't just say, or maybe you can, these large planes and these helicopters can no longer come in. This airport is only for this, that it has to be, there's some kind of a different ruling for that. Is that the case?
Well, you can't discriminate against any particular type of aircraft. So that's one of the issues. And then, that would be true, regardless of conditions. And again, that was part of one of the arguments of the plaintiffs in the case, was that we were being discriminatory against helicopters because that restriction, predominantly would affect them flying under those conditions.
So you can't just say that no helicopters at this airport. You just can't do that. Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Not to my understanding, no, we can't just do that.
Well, folks, if you have some airport thoughts, and I'm sure some of you do, I see a lot of them on social media, give us a call. Numbers on the screen there going across the top, or shoot us an email. Peter, the other thing that's happening, obviously the big talk is the cell towers, and the article in the paper said, I have the paper right here, the tower talk brings new ideas. The fire department site is pitched. They were talking a little bit about the cell tower on wheels. What are your thoughts in that direction?
Well, look, I think the first thing I would say is that the community and hamlet of Springs is underserved, both with emergency communications and with personal cellular communications. And it's something that we've worked on for a number of years, really, to correct. It was my administration that first proposed emergency communications to fill those gaps within Springs. And, there's been a lot of work trying to identify a suitable site. Springs is the most densely populated hamlet in the town. So it's virtually impossible to site a tower where it won't be affecting residents within the community. To what degree it might affect them is really what we're looking to mitigate. We had discussions for some time with American Tower, which owns the site at the Girl Scout camp. There was reluctance on behalf of the owners, the Girl Scouts of Nassau County, to have a tower that would be tall enough to allow our emergency communication system to connect a backhaul and to also meet all those coverage gap areas within the hamlet. There was, as you know, I guess you really can't call it anything but a fiasco regarding the fire department tower that was put up without proper review and approvals, was in litigation for 4.5+ years when the fire department sued the town over a ZBA ruling. Court upheld the ZBA, saying, in fact, the fire department did have to go through that process and a full secret review. The tower that they put up is still sitting there. There's nothing in it to turn on. There aren't any antennas. There's no emergency equipment other than a whip antenna that they put on the top of it, which isn't licensed, by the way. And, it's not simply something you could turn on. I think there are something like 12 residences within the fall zone. And, there has been a proposal about putting up an emergency cell on wheels, COW, if you will, at Crandall, Lincoln. There's a 7-acre parcel there that the town owns, would require about a 100 by 100 area of 100-foot area of clearing in order to put the necessary equipment and tower on it. It's on a 7-acre parcel. There would be no house within the fall zone. We are reviewing all possible alternatives. We understand that people in the neighborhood don't want a cell tower in their neighborhood, yet I'm sure if you ask them, they all want coverage. They all want to have access to both emergency communications and personal wireless communications. So I don't think that's the question. It's where would be a location that would be found most acceptable. We're certainly under review of any potential property. We welcome suggestions. We've looked at the landfill by the highway department. It's too far away to meet the coverage requirements of both emergency communications and personal wireless. We really need to have something in the area of spring school to Girl Scout camp. If we drew a transect across that area, that's pretty much where it would need to be sited. You can't place one on dedicated parkland without going through a parkland alienation process through the state legislature. That's 12 to 18 months to be able to even complete that. And frankly, I think that sets a very bad precedent, taking parkland to use for that type of a utility. So it would have to be a piece of property owned by the town, which is general municipal purposes, or the school district allowing the siting, or some other larger landowner, in order to meet all the requirements and setbacks for fall zone. So it's a pretty daunting task. We've poured over all the parcels within the hamlet. Again, we welcome any suggestions. Chances are we've already looked at those locations. There are many, many constraints. So we'll continue to move forward with discussions and review to see if there's a better location. But at this point, none has really risen to the top of the list.
Just to reaffirm that if folks have thoughts about this, they can call in tomorrow during the town meeting, right?
They can call in today.
They can call in right now.
Right now.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they have you all to themselves, Peter. These shy folks, they're not so shy on social media. It's really interesting. But a lot more to follow on the cell tower. Let's talk a little bit about our favorite subject, Peter. We've been talking about it a long time. That's COVID and the COVID restrictions or anything new for the town, with that.
Well, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the concerns about the Delta variant and how this particular variant is so many more times contagious than the original COVID virus. This this virus variant will transmit in a very brief moment, maybe 1,000 times more potent. So, even people who are vaccinated it's recommended that they wear masks indoors. We've seen a big uptick in cases in town. And I will say that I just got a text message moments ago from staff saying that the testing site here at Town Hall is out of tests and will be closed. We've seen the numbers of cars awaiting tests in the parking lot really increase over the last several weeks. We're checking to see if the Montauk site is still open or not. But this is, should be of great concern to people. We don't want to go back into a lockdown. Fortunately, a lot of people who are being infected who have been vaccinated are not suffering severe illness. That's not the case, however, with folks that are unvaccinated. So we're still urging anyone who's not been vaccinated, who's eligible to be vaccinated, to get a vaccination. Call your local healthcare provider. The town will continue to work with health agencies to provide testing. We're looking to put together a pop-up again in Montauk, maybe at the Playhouse, likely at the Playhouse later this month, to offer more vaccinations.
When you say, I'm sorry, excuse me, when you say the testing site is,
At Town Hall.
that's just for today, or?
As far as I know, it's just closing for today because they've run out of tests. I don't know if that's going to be a longer term issue. We know that the lab result times had steadily increased because of the huge volume that the labs are taking on in terms of numbers of tests being submitted. That's increased. We saw this before during the last spike in the fall and into the winter last year. There's more and more stress on that system. So, I think should be of concern, and people should take heed and take precautions. We really would like to see the economy stay open. I think it's also really important for people's mental health that we not get locked down again. But let's everybody monitor the situation. We may be requiring masks indoors at Town Hall again here shortly. And we'll have a discussion about that in the next day or so.
What about the vaccination requirements that some places are having?
So I know in some, that's something that we've talked about. Our CSEA local unit, labor unit has supported that idea. That's the recommendation that we've had. So it's likely that we will implement something to that effect. There are questions obviously about the regular testing. We would hope that everyone would just get vaccinated. But if you're not vaccinated, then there would be a regular testing requirement for employment here. And I know there are other employers doing the same. But that also brings up the questions of capacity of testing locations. And if you're going to be testing as frequently as a week, be much better if you got vaccinated. So we're still encouraging everyone to get vaccinated.
Yeah, it's a difficult time, no doubt. I mean, we implemented the fact that, you have to be vaccinated to come into LTV now. We just started that on August 1st. And, you get a little bit of pushback on that, but, you try to do again, there's no playbook on this stuff. So you're trying to do the right thing. And, but you're seeing in a lot of places around town, I know the Talk House and Guildhall and many of the restaurants now, you can't get in unless you're showing the ID, the fact that you were vaccinated. So, it's we'll see where it goes, I guess, but you should stay the course.
It's important to stay masked indoors now again, because you can, even if you're vaccinated, you can contract this new Delta variant. and you can carry it and you can spread it. And, part of the concern for that is that there are a number of people, even though they've been vaccinated, are immunocompromised, they're undergoing cancer treatments, whatnot. This is potentially lethal disease for somebody in that situation. Obviously, it could be spread to anyone who's unvaccinated. That causes real concerns for their health. We're not through this yet. I wish we were, I really do. But we'll keep at it and do our best to keep the public informed as to the latest guidance and do whatever we need to do to help keep our community safe and healthy.
Well, thanks, Peter. And any closing words of wisdom for you?
Words of wisdom. Okay, it's August, and often by this point in the summer, with all the additional people out here and whatnot, tempers can be a little frayed. Everybody just take a deep breath and stay calm and carry on. I guess that's a really good phrase. I didn't invent it, but certainly one that's very applicable now and in many, many situations.
Well, it's a good way to close it out, Peter. Once again, thank you for taking the time on a busy day of the week, and we'll see you next week at the same time.
Thanks so much, Michael. Thank you, LTV. Always a pleasure to see you, and thanks for all the great work you do for the community.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll see you. Take care, folks.